The biggest challenge that I have faced over the last year was finding a way to keep my grades up and keep my sanity. It sounds overdramatic, but the change between going to school and doing school at home was brutal. At school, it's easy to stay focused, and the physicality of going to school gives students an objective. Due to COVID, we lost that. We no longer had a place to go, a quiet place to work, or the ability to use physical school resources. For me, it changed how I went about my education. I noticed that my ability to stay focused and my ability to stay on top of things changed so much that I got extremely creative about how I was going about it. Everywhere, speed bumps kept popping up, and I had to work around them. A year later, I've gotten good at it, but I still find myself missing going to school, which is a statement I never thought I'd write.
My biggest challenge was making the transition from high school to college at the age of 16 in a state of national turmoil. I was living dangerously close to the fires in the fall, meaning I couldn't even have my window open most days. I had friends living in Portland during the protests, and I had not acclimated to distance learning, much less distance learning in college. It was a time of great uncertainty, and the last thing I wanted to focus on was my classes.
The biggest challenge for me was not being able to make personal connections with my teachers and classmates on a daily basis. It is so important for me to create relationships in my learning environment and to interact face to face. At the beginning, many people would keep their cameras on, which was helpful in creating a somewhat normal learning space and helped me get to know my peers. But as time went on, more screens became black and more conversations were happening through the chat box. This would at times leave me feeling disheartened and disengaged.
One of the difficulties of being homebound during this challenging time in history is the effect that living with a toxic family has on the psyche. While as a dual enrollment student, I would have been with my family anyways, the time I spend at home has been greatly amplified due to the suspension of in-person activities. Having to deal with the mental harm they inflict, as well as feeling stuck in this seemingly unending circumstance, has been my biggest challenge.
I would say my biggest challenge this year has been trying to figure out how to be a part of the collective experience and process personal grief around the experience that happened in 2020 and continued to happen into 2021, and feeling generally isolated, and longing to be a part of the bigger collective. I think there's a lot of missed opportunities too for just personal connection with other people. And that has been the most challenging thing.
The best and worst part of the year was that I got to see my beloved on her way out of this world. Despite all the limitations of travel during a global pandemic, I know many people did not get to do that privilege, and I am truly grateful. Honestly, PCC offering classes on Zoom has also been a huge highlight for me. It's allowed me to be a full-time student when I authorized wouldn't be. And it allowed me to move down to LA and take care of my loved one in the middle of a term and not have to quit school. And I have to say that a couple of the teachers have really been a major reason I was able to stay in school. Their level of understanding and flexibility has been such a huge gift. So much thanks to George, Zamzu, Jennifer Hensley, and most especially Mary Ketterly.
Over the last year, my biggest highlight was and has been proving to myself that I can do this. When I got the news that we would be doing school from home, I was stumped. I had to work quickly to make sure my computers and personal equipment could keep up with the work my courses gave out, which meant spending money. There have been plenty of times, especially this term, where I felt like giving up, but I've toughed through it every day, and that makes me feel proud. Even if I had to reach out to professors, I've gotten so far. My GPA may not be as pretty as it used to be, and my work ethic might not be quite what it was, but I've completed several terms this way and can do several more if I have to.
My biggest highlight was completing my first term. Knowing that I made it through and that the instructors were there to help me made the load of college significantly less immense. And now, hearing that enough people are vaccinated and we may be able to return in the fall for my first time on campus, I'm even more excited.
On the other side, my biggest highlight was being able to interact with other students over the internet through discussion posts and group study sessions. This allowed for everyone to see the perspectives of their peers and participate in open, honest, healthy conversations. This also allowed for the students to receive support and not feel so alone.
I think my biggest challenge would be when I have to get things done by 11 p.m. because I do get off at 7, sometimes 8, and I only have that limited amount of time after work to get things done. But I do want to get through school, so I try to stay committed and do that. But it's kind of a challenge. And my biggest highlight would be when I pass after studying so hard. When I pass a test, when I pass an assignment, homework, anything, when studying so hard.
This year really highlighted how different we all are as students. We had a huge range of experiences, circumstances, and outcomes. It's important for administration to continue to support students in nuanced ways and understand that student support can't be a one-size-fits-all approach.
I think the online offerings have added a lot of accessibility for many of us during this time. Folks who have jobs, kids, certain disabilities, and live far away are able to learn at PCC during this time when they otherwise would not. I really hope the college administration considers this accessibility as we move towards reopening. Also, some folks are still not comfortable with the level of exposure while returning to in-person, even if many folks are vaccinated, and I hope this doesn't become a barrier to learning.
I believe the biggest challenge is to make sure all voices, to include both students and staff, are heard regarding the future. There is no one perfect answer, but I believe we need to make sure not to listen only to the loudest voices. There are silent voices out there on many issues, and the futures of the school is no exception. I believe the pandemic has taught the school, for example, the benefits of remote learning. It meets the needs of many students and appropriately bridges the gap of those who cannot attend in residence, yet want a learning modality that better approximates in-person learning. This is just one example of the possibilities for the future.
Living in downtown Portland, where there is a lot of civil unrest during a year and a half of lockdown from a global pandemic, has made it hard to focus on my studies. Having teachers and faculty that understand this and are willing to be flexible with due dates and coursework are extremely helpful.
Students need to be in classes for less time and more opportunities for help. Tutoring was inaccessible. Communication also needs to be more concise and frequent. I had no idea the supports that were available to me until it was too late. All of the incredible resources were a click away, but I didn't even know about them. Maybe having someone come into every class to introduce resources or having advisors connect with students one-on-one at least once a year would be rad, instead of the generic email that goes out to everyone.
One way that administration could help or support students at this time would be to have an open forum Zoom project that would have bi-weekly meetings where students could come and have productive conversations regarding anything that they are thinking about regarding the current state of things. This would be led by a counselor or representative from the school. This way, if the school is closed due to the pandemic, the students have some contact with other students at the school.
I think the biggest challenge as a student for the past year was to adapt to the online learning setting, and also I need to learn how to be more self-disciplined. But luckily, I felt like my teachers, my instructors, I'm really grateful for that. Like they always encourage us to to establish a community with our classmates. So yeah, even though I'm isolated at home and taking online classes, I felt I still have a sense of community that they are there to help me with my homework or give me emotional support. That's how I got through the past year. So yeah, I think that's a big challenge, but it's also like a highlight of my past year as a student.